No, it's good. Okay, so I want to speak about that because it's important. So in terms of soft power, well, I think that's the thing that's sort of so radical, obviously, about Christianity is because ultimately there is so much soft power in Christianity. In fact, there is. I mean, that is what it's predicated on. I mean, Christ was crucified. He has presented himself as the lamb. Um, we are asked to become brides. You know, it's like it's there laid out all across the scriptures, and like the books, some of them have stronger masculine principles, some of them stronger feminine principle, and it's so much more nuanced than we think about in the way that we think about it. And obviously some books, you know, it's God because God is obviously beyond gender and is able to, you know, is like bringing both of those things, but has like God the Father as the source, is allowed to, he's ministering to every part of us, knowing that all the different parts of us need different things, but knowing also that men have this softness in them that needs to be cultivated and spoken to, and women have this power and this fire in them that needs to be cultivated and spoken to, but that in order for them to live in harmony together as embodied beings in the world, in the creation, in the order that he's created, that there's also these certain things that need to be in place. And so he's put the plan in place in order that we can just experience the blessedness of being alive. So I think that, you know, what the church represents is the power of soft power. I mean, she always, her role is in the unseen primarily. And so what she's doing is not even known by anyone really, like in the world. And then there's the small part, which is the more political side, or and it might be more instrumental in some countries than others, in some nations than others. I mean, thank God when she has more power in a certain nation, because that nation is going to be in a better situation than when she doesn't. But the main thing that the church is something that is unseen, unknown, and that is the witness also of the monastic. Is like it's hidden. It's this hidden mystery. It's this hidden life of love, of sacrifice, of love, of prayer, and that is something that all Christians. Not all Christians are called to be monastics, but we're all called to be consecrated to God as in holiness, and that is something that's commanded not even just of all Christians, but of all human beings. And so, you know, what I mean, feminism is like psychology. Like a lot of what it's saying is true, and it's able to locate the problem, but it doesn't present the right solution. And a step further is some of these terms that we're hearing that are helpful. Like, yeah, they're helpful because they're connecting to a spiritual reality that's laid out in the scriptures and that's upheld and witnessed by the church, basically. So what we can do in order to receive the fullness of their blessing is to go to the source, which is the church itself, which is Christ himself. And then not only will we receive that cultural shift that will come through living in a more godly way or observing God's commandments, whether we know that we're doing so or not, and whether we describe it as that or not, but because that is what a lot of, say, the women who are working in order to shed light and uphold the truth of the things that do happen in relation to gender and where they're wrong and where they need to be witnessed, but doing so in a way that is harmonious with God's will for the world and for his creatures. And that's what these women who are what they're doing at the moment. And this is really amazing work and really needed. And it's not a coincidence that it is happening at this time and that there is this flourishing. Because obviously it's also a backlash against the, you know, decadence of what has taken place and how it's progressed to its logical end and what we see in other forms of feminism. And so, you know, ultimately, like most women engaged I was more militant, but like a lot of my sisters who would have called themselves feminists and would be like, yeah, for the cause and gone on marches, but they they cared up to a point, and then they were like, I just want to go be with my boyfriend and have a good life. Whereas they weren't. It wasn't so much like the mission and the text and the changes that we need to make on like, like this all-consuming crusade. So, a lot of, I think women instinctively know what God created them to do, which is to have this role in reality that's so, so important of cultivating this nucleus of peace and joy and blessedness in which children can grow, and of course this could be spiritual children. It's not necessarily, you might be called to celibacy and you might have this calling, but generally if you don't, that's also your work. It's about responsibility. It's about being humble in the face of reality, natural reality, and being like, okay, this is who I am, this is how God created me. I don't need to worry about if it's wrong, because it turns out that it's definitely right, because God is the one who made it happen in this way. So therefore I can put all of those years wasted in thinking about this thing and stressing about this thing, and the hatred is cultivated through all the things that I read in order to try and understand this non-problem and live my life in a way that blesses others. And that's why I think that's the main thing, is it comes back to self-sacrifice. Because however you slice it, and whatever validity there is in the reason why these ideas about, like, say, the sort of main feminist precepts and about patriarchy and what needs to be done in order to oppose it and to change it, like, women don't know that they have a role, both obviously in terms of practical, and that's the work, and that's the hard work, and that's the side of it, obviously, that understandably that was resisted and is still being resisted in terms of the domestic, but also that you have a spiritual role, both in terms of as a parent, but in terms of your role in the community, your role within worship, the prophesy, like your prophetic role as women, and your instinctive understanding of bridal love, and your ability to surrender to Christ in a way that is sometimes really hard for men to do, and to be a bride and to read the Song of Songs and just know, I totally get this. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in my spirit in order to be united with my Creator in a way that might not be necessarily as easy for a man to kind of comprehend. And there's just so much wonder about it. It's just such a wonderful thing to be a woman, and to be able to connect with your spiritual role as a woman, specifically in a gendered way. And I think obviously because we're not taught this, and the things that have been silencing to women and putting aside the violence and degradation, of course those things are so destructive, but just the pushing aside and the not listening for the opinion and not wanting to know, and devaluing and decentering, and those things, have overtaken those other aspects of what it means to live a mystical, spiritual life, but an embodied life, and one that is real in the world, and that your gendered role works on both levels and needs to be cultivated on both levels and understood on both levels. I mean, bringing children into the world and cultivating them in the early stages of their life is the highest honor. It's what God does. It's what God did to us. It's so beautiful, and it's something that needs to be done well.